On the podcast today, we are going to dissect chapter 42 of the Tao Te Ching, which makes up the 42nd episode of the 81 meditations on the Tao Te Ching. And as usual, Guyang will read Jia Fu Feng and Jane English's translation, and I will read Derek Lin's translation.
The Tao begot one, one begot two, two begot three, and three begot the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things carry yin and embrace yang. They achieve harmony by combining these forces. People hate to be orphaned, widowed, or worthless, but this is how the wise describe themselves. For one gains by losing and loses by gaining. What others teach, I also teach, that is, a violent person will die a violent death. This is the essence of my teaching.
Tao produces one produces two produce three produce myriad things backed by yin and embracing yang achieve harmony by integrating their energy. What the people dislike are alone bereft and unworthy. But the rulers call themselves with these terms, so with all things appear to take loss but benefit, or receive benefit but lose what the ancients taught. I will also teach the violent one cannot have a natural death. I will use this as the principle of all teachings. So in chapter 2, we kind of find Taoism's creation story and also the element of karma, the principle of karma we find also in this chapter as well. But it's also about mainly the principle of yin and yang.
Principle of yin and yang is what in Taoism we talk about the birth of universe theory, right? Again, the Tao begot one, one begot two, two begot three, and from three, where there's 10,000 things come out of.
Yeah, that's right. So to explain that, we have Uchi creates Tai Chi, or Tai Chi arises from Uchi. So Uchi here is Tao in stillness. Uchi is Tao in motion. And so from Tai Chi, yin and yang are born. So
Yes.
the unified opposites of reality. So, and I like to clarify that they are this interplay of unified opposites. You know, it's an element of duality, but in Taoism, you got to remember everything comes from the one. So these are unified opposites. And then from there, you have the four symbols, which is Xishang, and then from Xishang you have the Bagua, the 8 trigrams, for those who are familiar with the I Ching. Now, those outer elements are not as important in this chapter. It's more so the 3 core concepts where we have Uchi, Tai Chi, in yin and yang,
Yes.
because they are the 3 foundational building blocks of reality itself. But the Bagua, again, is basically, and in the Xishang are the dynamic principles of the 10,000 things, you could say.
Yes. I think if we can imagine the symbol of yin and yang, the unified opposite, right? In the one circle, there's yin and yang, and each yin part and yang part, there's also little dots of the opposite colors, right?
Yes.
So that is a perfect symbol to explain this chapter, and also the I Ching, the symbols, the hexagram,
Yes.
right? So that could be a good example to show what we're talking about.
Exactly.
And
well, I was going to say, with the Bagua symbol, like you have the yin and yang in the middle, and then you have the 8 trigrams around it, and then from there, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching are born, right? So that's
Right.
kind of a complete symbol of the seed of the seed and the manifestation of the universe.
right,
And also the yin and yang symbol itself, traditionally, just on its own, is called Tai Chi. Because that's what's within Tai Chi, within
Yes.
motion, is inherently these 2 fundamental principles.
yes. It's the symbolism in the Taoism that we find in I Ching and the yin and yang are just perfect, and also it's beautiful in a way that that itself just explains everything about Taoism, right? Taoist philosophy. So that's something that we can also take a reference of.
Exactly. And as you were mentioning too before, like the small dot on each, we all have an aspect of that within ourselves, right? So also within, say, yang, there's there's yin, and
Yin.
within yin there's yang. And so we are a perfect integration of both the unified opposites. A human being is kind of a reflection of the fundamental forces of the universe condensing into what we call the human being.
Yes.
So we are a perfect integration of yin and yang, though we don't realize it because we embrace one over the other, and that causes a lot of problems.
And again, this chapter is talking about that harmony between the two, right? That unified opposites, and how can the opposites be unified, right? And that's the harmony aspect is what's important in this chapter. So that how we find the harmony within the two opposites, like we talked about many times, the humility and coming from the lower place and not putting yourself up in the pedestal and things like that. So from that place we can find the harmony between the two opposites.
Yeah, well, in the chapter, it mentions like the average person dislikes being alone, bereft, and unworthy, right? Whereas the wise, the ruler, they call themselves by these terms: being alone, bereft, and unworthy. Now, Lao Tzu is saying it in type of a tongue-in-cheek way, but as to say that the ruler or the wise sage is humble enough to feel like that they're not worthy of all of these things that a lot of people want in life, right? Like they're the complete opposite of what people dislike, right? So people dislike these things, but the sage clings to these, saying, "Oh, I feel comfortable being unworthy. I feel comfortable being alone."
Right.
As opposed to the average person who will run in the opposite direction to that.
Yes. Yeah, orphan, widowed, or worthless, right?
Yeah,
It's something that's, no one wants to be.
No.
But again, the wise, the sage, don't mind it.
No.
Because that's the place where sometimes need to be to realize something deeper in life, to see something deeper in principle in nature.
Yeah. Well, Lao Tzu is trying to say to us that that's a representation of humility, right? Having that humility and not being arrogant or self-grandizing about yourself, like you deserve this or this and that, instead of going out and earning something, for example. Like we see a lot in the modern day, right, where a lot of people say they deserve something, and that's one of the most negative phrases you could hear, because why do you deserve it over someone else, right? If you go out and earn it, no one can say anything. You went and you earned whatever you got.
Yes.
But in saying you deserve it, it's kind of a negative phrase. Like
it's almost like you demand something that you shouldn't be.
Yeah. You're basically trying to force the universe's hand, saying, "Hey,
put a hand out. You owe me something.
You owe me something. You've been forgetting about me, right?" But that's not the way it is. And that's what Lao Tzu is saying in this chapter, is saying that if we stick to that humility, that's actually the natural character that keeps yin and yang in balance, as opposed to, if you're arrogant. Typically if you're arrogant, there's a lot of yang, right? There's a lot of, you're forcing your view on someone else. And we see a lot of youngness in the world today, right? Where people have an agenda that they're trying to force on others. And this is why Lao Tzu says in a previous chapter, stick to the yin and conservatively use the yang.
Yes.
So, and that's actually naturally our psychology. We're more, people probably don't realize this, but we are more aware and present naturally than what we think. We just naturally don't think that we are that, because we've got so much external stimuli now that our minds aren't present and aware of its surroundings. But that's naturally how we are. We're aware and present. And then in being aware and present, we understand what's going on around us, so then we can conservatively apply the yang, right? As opposed to if you backflip that, you have a little bit of awareness and presence, but you're all activity. And so you are the complete opposite reflection of what the universe is, because the natural reflection of the universe is Wu Chi before Tai Chi. And we are a reflection of that, but we've flipped it on its head, and people wonder why we go crazy. Because it's not natural, right? It's not natural.
I got this quote as something to do with what you're saying. The foolish identify with the one force and are defeated by the counter force. this is violence. The wise do not seek to triumph in this way. Yeah, so like what you were saying, that a lot of people nowadays just identify with the only yin or only yang, right? Not knowing the other side, right?
Yep.
So that causing actually more problem, that you are getting defeated by the opposite actually.
Yep.
So if you only know yang, then because the absence of yin will actually destroy you in the end, right? So nowadays just people, we are too like hyper active in our mind and the body, so that we don't know how to just chill and relax in the end.
Yeah, and likewise, if you're too yin, you withdraw too much within yourself.
Right.
And so then you're not active at all. So there's not this complete balance, right? And to further what you were saying, we're not talking about actually like really the external forces here. We're talking about within ourselves. We're accessing the yin with too much within ourselves, because it doesn't really matter what we do out here. But if we're yang oriented, then we are going to come across problems within ourselves, because we're not keeping yin and yang in perfect balance within ourselves.
Yes.
And humility, as Lao Tzu had, the whole Tao Te Ching is a text on humility, right? And if you look at a lot of the ancient texts, right, even if you read like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, or all of these types of books are all a lesson in how to remain humble.
That's right.
And humility is actually a natural trait.
Yes.
But it's when we created societies that natural trait got skewered. And so we kind of are navigating a tricky terrain where we forget our nature, right? And so then we harmonize with the social yangness, and then we have the world we have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get short-sighted with the speed of the world at the moment, in a sense that you need to be productive and you need to do a lot of things at the same time, and you need to achieve a lot of things. But okay, that can be necessary at times, but what's most fundamental is that being able to observe the situation from afar sometimes, and that requires a lot of yin energy. You need to be able to kind of subtract yourself outside of your own mind, own head, and you need to be able to observe what's really going on, then apply action correctly.
Exactly.
And only from that way you can apply right action at the right time, right? So again, that takes a lot of humility, but the humility first and foremost requires a lot of acceptance, right? Acceptance is something that people maybe undermine, but acceptance actually takes a lot of courage. Maybe that's why they undermine it, because they don't want to take that courage, maybe.
No, of course not.
Because it takes a lot of courage to be able to accept things honestly as they are, right? And actually that's what's most important thing, to go one step further.
That's right. And that yang orientation, right? If you have that yang orientation, there's going to be conflict. You're going to have an agenda naturally, because you're outward. You're pushing your opinions and your beliefs on other people. Whereas you said, if you do as Lao Tzu says and remain in the yin primarily, you will act immediately and appropriately to each and every situation perfectly. You won't be pushing your opinion on anyone. And this is why, as you said, with acceptance, it's having that acceptance means that you can trust. And so because we don't accept our life and the reality around us, we don't trust. And so without trust, you can't have a harmonious world. That's just impossible.
Yes.
You can put Band-Aid solutions on everything. You can create the greatest political philosophy you've ever thought about, that you think you're going to solve injustice and this and that. But if you don't trust, or all of that was built on a lack of trust, then you will never have harmony.
Yes.
Not within the society and not within yourself. You have to have complete and ultimate radical acceptance of the way you are and the way life is. And then you'll feel more of a resonance with the Tao, more of a connection with it. And then that's how you can trust, right? And humility is that character to embody that. If you have that humility, you can accept and you can trust, because you don't have an opinion to push on other people. You don't have a worldview. that you think should be the worldview, right? You are perfectly fine with the way the world is.
Yeah, I mean, if you lose the trust of how things are, how the universe operates, is that you're basically living in denial. You're living in disbelief, right? And that can easily lead people into disbelief in their own existence, and they start questioning everything, right? But that's when you usually think negatively about the world and about yourself. Whereas if you start trust things, you are accepting it instead of being in denial, right? You're accepting this is how things work. This is how nature operates. So that whether you like it or not, it doesn't really matter. Like what you like or what you dislike actually does not matter at all in the bigger level of perspective, like how way the universe works, for example.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to accept, of course.
Because what you think and what you believe is insignificant to the ultimate reality. I mean, it really is. You've just deluded yourself in your own persona. You think that it's so important, but you are not special.
Yeah.
And there's a great freedom in that, actually. You're just a reflection of the Tao, and you're supposed to harmonize with that. That's why the Tao has put us where we are. Is the complete integration of those two forces, yin and yang. But we're holding on to one because we've accumulated thoughts and beliefs and this and that, and we think that's who we are, and we're going to push that on everyone. And as Lao Tzu says in this chapter, that comes with a warning, like a disclaimer. If you're going to go around doing that, don't be surprised what comes back around to you. This is what the Tao of karma is, right? Like, this is like the divine karma that we find in all traditions. And a lot of people say that there's no karma in Taoism, but here we have it. You know, Lao Tzu is talking plainly about it, that if you're going to be violent,
That's right.
you reap what you sow.
Exactly.
Don't be surprised, as Derek says in his translation, the violent one cannot have a natural death.
Yes.
They will have a violent death because that's what they've done for themselves.
That's right. I mean, a violent person will die a violent death. I mean, what other alternative can come to such person,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yes. So yeah, what you reap what you sow. Yeah, that's.
And a lot of people see bad examples, right? They might see someone who's a rich person who goes around and steals money from people and lives an extravagant lifestyle, and a lot of people say, well, where's their karma? You know what I mean? Patience. What you see eventually with these people is that their life, it goes in a downward spiral. Things don't happen overnight. The universe is not an ATM machine where it just spits out instant cash. You take time. You've got to accumulate.
Yeah.
And so you even notice in your own life, right, when you've done something that you think, oh, geez, like, you know, the one where it really hits your conscience and you go, shit, I did something, you know, like that's out of sync with what I normally do.
Right.
That festers and that comes back around to, wouldn't say haunt you, but you reap what you sow eventually, right? And there's different degrees of magnitude to that. But if you're a violent person, for example, or you're someone who's intellectually violent, who is constantly pushing your opinion on others and undermining other people and this and that, that's going to come back around to you. Maybe it comes back around to them. They have no friends. They have no one to deeply confide in. You know, it presents itself in a different way, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. It comes around a different look.
Yeah.
But it will come around in some way.
Yeah. Well, we've always, all of us listening, everyone listening and watching has probably had an a-hole in their life, right? There's been an a-hole there, and eventually what happens to that person? People distance themselves from them, and then they end up living a very peculiar life. And that's got nothing to do with you distancing yourself from them. It's just a psychologically healthy thing to probably distance yourself from that person. But then they go on just doing what they do, and they wonder why no one wants to be close to them, why everyone keeps a distance. And look, maybe they like that. But in the end of the day, people want to connect.
Yes.
And so it's, especially when people get older, they want to connect. And then if you've gone along, and if you're not a sage who can just be alone and this and that and be completely fine, then you're going to suffer.
Yeah, we often get upset when you are around people like that who behaves unconsciously and gives negative energy and negative action, which affects other people directly or indirectly. But again, like those people will find their own destiny in its accord, right? Like whenever it's time for them to have that, it'll come around. And for us, we just keep the distance. And then in that sort of circumstance, you might get angry, you might get confused why it happened to you and this and that. But best way is to just to keep the distance and do your work and be patient.
Yeah. You have to shift your perspective.
Yeah.
Like for everyone on the spiritual path, you have to shift your perspective. You can't get totally angry at people for doing certain things. I mean, you can't hold grudges and this and that. This will just weigh you down. You can't account for why people are the way they are. They will reap what they sow, but you also will reap what you sow if you're going around judging people all the time and this and that. In one of Derek Lin's lectures, he mentioned the Zhuangzi story, the empty boat analogy in the Zhuangzi, and it's a great story. And it's something for us on the spiritual path to think about, because in the story, the boat guy is on the ocean, right? And he's just drifting, and there's these other big boats coming along, and they're coming in his direction, and he's like screaming and yelling, like, oi, 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 oi. You know, and he's swearing and everything, anything you think about.
Get out of my way.
Get out. And then next minute, the boats hit his boat, but then he looks into the boat and there's no one there. And so instantly his anger and frustration, that all subsides because there's nobody there, right?
What was he getting angry at?
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And so that's a metaphor for what we do on the path, right? Where we go around getting angry at people, and this is also for the violent person as well. Like, think about, why are you getting angry and violent about things when you could look at it if you shift your perspective, these are just empty boats coming into conflict with your reality. And how are you dealing with that?
That's right.
And if we want to go deeper aspects of the Zhuangzi, we're all empty boats colliding with each other. There's no one really there.
So then anger arises. Anger itself is there, right? That you can feel it.
Yeah.
You're reacting to it, right?
Yeah.
But there is nothing to get angry at outwardly.
No.
There is no one on the boat. So what are you really angry at?
Exactly.
So that means something within ourselves is triggering that anger by that empty boat. You think there is somebody on the boat, but there is actually nobody.
Nobody there, yeah.
But that is actually something triggers within ourselves, and that it comes up as an anger, form of anger, so that you are reacting to it.
Yeah. So if you shift your perspective and if you look at reality that we're all empty boats just cruising along and we're just in the one river of the Tao doing our thing, then your anger will subside and your modus operandi will be, everything's not a big deal. Like, a boat may hit you and it's like, what to do?
And sometimes
there's a lot of boats on the ocean, you know, it's going to happen. Like, you're going to bump up against something. But if we hold that anger,
yes,
then we're just screaming into the wind. We're screaming at all of these captainless boats that are just cruising around. And how is that healthy for anyone?
Yeah.
In relation to this chapter, I mean, that's what a violent person, how they reap what they sow.
That's right. That'll only harm ourselves, because you're not angry at anyone really in reality. But your emotion is there, then it'll only damage yourself, right? If you continue to get angry at things.
That's right. Okay, guys, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time.